Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whiskey. My name's Vin PF, and on today's episode we're going to be covering some good aged Scotch actually, which is something I don't often get around on the channel anymore, so we'll get into how I got this, but yeah, grateful to have it. But today we have the Fettercairn 16-year-old. Now this right here is the third release. This is the 2022 bottle. They've had 3 releases, we'll go through that in a moment, but I've come about this because it's the latest Somerton Club delivery. Now, I go on about Somerton quite a lot. It's actually only a couple of videos ago that I covered the December's Somerton delivery, and that one, I mean, the reason why they're so close, usually I cover the Somerton delivery pretty close after delivery like I have this month. I really struggled with that last bottle, and I'm still struggling with it now. It's just here, boop, boop, boop. You can just see it in the background there. That's going to be there for a while, I think. I'll keep going back to it. We'll see how we get on. But we've only just taken delivery of this earlier on this week, and I'm covering it straight away because I really like it, but we'll get into that towards the end of the video as I normally do. But yeah, if by some reason you've been watching my videos and you don't know who the Somerton Club are now, check out the links in the description below. They're just a club that I subscribe to every 2 months. They take 50 quid of my hard-earned and they send me a bottle that I just don't know that I'm going to get. You might have seen other YouTubers and whatnot covering it now, because a lot of us get the same deliveries, and a lot of people on social media are receiving this week as well. So you might have seen a little bit of buzz about this. But in any case, let's get into the actual bottle and see what we've got. As I said, Fettercairn 16-year-old. Fettercairn are a bit of a funny distillery because they've been around for a long old time, but in terms of readily available OB, originally bottled whiskey, they've only really been doing that for the last couple of decades tops. We could have got hold of it, sure, but it was only until recently that they've really been pushing it out to people like me and you. If you were breaking it down across the entire world, like Scotch wise at least, like something like 10% of the global market for Scotch is this kind of single malt category that you and I love. The rest of it is blends, and then on top of that, like the single cask stuff is like really, really niche. And if you look at the global market, obviously in our little world, that's rife. We all know and we all love it. What I'm trying to say is that they've only really been starting to appeal to us and to me over the last sort of decade or so. So much so that I haven't really covered much Fettercairn, but I've been a bit critical of them in the background, because one of the first releases they did were like the 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds charging hundreds of pounds for these things, because the numbers matched, but they were relatively unproven liquid, apart from to a real kind of really, really super niche few. And for me, they were just they went in too hard, too expensive, and went straight above me. Basically, they went straight into the kind of super expensive bracket, and I just couldn't afford that. Now they've started releasing, they've got their 12-year-old, their 16-year-old, 18, blah blah blah, all these things, and they're doing it in an interesting way. Obviously, the days of having a consistent core range are almost over. There's a few people that are still kind of plugging away with that, who have got their stocks for the last 30 years, but they'll dwindle, I imagine, unless they were really forward-thinking. I don't think that many people would be able to see that we'd be in this sort of buzz. Bit of a wittering episode, this one, but anyway, bear with me. But basically, they're doing things a little bit differently now. They've released a lot of more affordable whiskies like this, and that's where we're at. This one in particular, it's 46.4%, so it's non-chill filtered. It's added colour, I think. It does say on the back of the label here, non-chill filtered, but it doesn't make any mention of no added colour. So you have to assume that if they've gone to the effort of putting non-chill filtered but not the other on the label, that there's probably a little drop or two in there. But I have to say, as I always say on these videos, added colour does not bother me. I just wish it was the law that if it was added, that it had to be on the label, like it is in other countries. I just wish that was a thing. Soapbox over. Right, so here we have the third release, the 2022 release. So obviously that's had 2 other releases beforehand. The first one was in 2020. Then 2021, and they've had different makeups. This one here is a mixture of Oloroso PX and X bourbon casks. Now the first release was exclusively aged in first fill American oak before being finished in sherry casks, which is already very different to this. I think as well, I haven't got obviously a side by side, but I think they kind of, it was a bit darker than this, but again, we've talked about colour, we don't know about that. The second release was a mixture of first fill Oloroso, refill Oloroso, and first fill Palo Cortado. So again, very, very different. Let's get into the actual tasting on this one then and see what we've got in the glass. You know, not going to spend too much time talking about colour, but there it is for those of you who are interested. Let's get down the nose and see what we've got. Now, this one's got a really kind of like fresh, clean nose. For me, it's lots of apples. There's that kind of like characteristic tropical note that a lot of Fettercairns have. You know, that seems to intermingle through the kind of core range and beyond a little bit. That's a bit of a distillery character. And on the back end, for me, there's quite a lot of like gingerbread in there as well. Not overwhelming, but it all just kind of mingles in together quite nicely. Let's try on the palate. Okay. It's nice. It's got, for me, it's like honey, a lot more of those apples and tropical notes. For me, the gingerbread has kind of disappeared a little bit from the nose to the palate. Some raisins, but it isn't kind of like heavily sherried. It's just a little bit of raisiny on the back end. And for me, it's kind of like almost like a white pepper spiciness that's tingling away in the background. The finish, most of that tends to drop off quite quickly, leaving the peppery spiciness on the back end, but overall it's quite nice. You know, it isn't overly sweet, it isn't overly sour, it isn't overly anything, but it is very tasty. I think the overarching kind of the big spike is the pepperiness. Let's have another little sip. Yeah, there's a lot to like about this. Depends the only thing I think might put you off is the big hit of peppery spiciness on the back end. You know, if that's not you, if you're into like super gentle drams, yeah, I mean this definitely is in that sort of vein, but that's the only thing I can think of that might put someone off it. But I have to say, I think most people would really like this. Bit of a weird thing to say because it's kind of not really out there in any direction, but it's just good value. But talking of value, that's the really interesting thing about this. So this now sells for roughly 70 quid, which, you know, by today's prices is not half bad for a 16-year-old that's non-chill filtered at a good ABV. Obviously, I got this for 50 quid delivered, so that is an absolute bargain. So, you know, factoring in the two different kinds are there. Would I have bought this at 70 quid? Probably not, but not because I don't like it, but just because I've got so much whiskey that I can choose to buy that I don't know. There's not a hell of a lot of reason for me to pick it, but then I'd be remiss. I'd be missing out almost. But that's where this video gets a bit interesting because, like, obviously I'm coming at it from the point of view of spending 50 quid on it. But would I recommend you spend 70? Sure, if you've got the money. But that's where it gets hard to say because as someone who's going to have to spend 70 on it, if you weren't part of Somerton, you've missed that boat and you can't get this for 50, then I think there's not a Scotch drink on the planet, a whiskey drink on the planet that wouldn't be happy to get this for 50 quid. That's what I'm trying to get out there. And if you're going to be spending 70 on it, there might be a slither of you who are disappointed. That's, I mean, a really small slither, but that's me trying to be as fair as I can to this because, yeah, for me, I'm loving this. I'm going to really enjoy that. That isn't going to last very long at all. I'll put it on the shelf behind me and we'll see whether I reach for it or not over the next few months. But yeah, really enjoying that. Really pleased I got it for 50 quid. As always, pleased to be part of the Somerton Club. You know, despite receiving a bottle that I don't like last month, always happy to get the Rediscovery. And then, you know, Dan pulls it out of the bag and gets a really incredible discount on a bottle. That's what it's all about for me. So I'll say cheers to you. Hopefully, if you've tried this, if you're part of the Somerton Club, let me know in the comments below what you think about it. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're not and you've tried it, what do you think about Fettercairn nonetheless? Cheers. See you on another video.